In today's episode, Jake gets up close and personal with synchronicities, and so do we. Aaron Deepneau answers a really lame riddle, and the rose makes its on-screen debut appearance. Welcome back to Dark Tower YouTube. My name is Michelle McEwen, I am your host, and here at Dark Tower YouTube, we're taking a deep psychological dive into the magic, the mystery, and the metaphysics of Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower. So glad to be back with you here. Can I just live here? This is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing with my time. How about y'all? Let's just live here. We have a lot to cover today. We're going to continue our coverage of the Wastelands. We are on Book 1, Jake, Section 2, Key and Rose, starting with Chapter 13 today. I have up to Chapter 17 in my notes, Chapter 13 through 17. Will I get there? That's always a good question when I start recording. We have a lot to talk about today. If you have not read The Wastelands, there are spoilers for The Wastelands. You get that, right? Don't listen to this. Come back once you have. And one more thing is that I recorded a video for you about all of the books that Calvin Tower is going to throw at us through Stephen King in the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind, because that ended up being a whole hour, 45 minutes to an hour of just going through what are these books, who's in them, what does Stephen King think about these authors, etc., etc. Really cool stuff. Check that out if you have not already. We're going to move through that actual action in today's episode. Jumping right into it, we are at the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind, and Jake is walking on in, looking at the children's display there, and he sees a book called Charlie the Choo Choo. He's engrossed by this book. This is the one. It's pulling him. He doesn't like the illustration. He's noticing it. Beryl Evans apparently wrote and illustrated Charlie the Choo Choo, and he's remembering all of those choo-choos from his essay. King writes, "He grabbed the book and clutched it tightly, as if it might fly away if he relaxed his grip. And as he looked down at the cover, Jake found that he did not trust the smile on Charlie the Choo Choo's face. 'You look happy, but I think that's just the mask you wear,' he thought. 'I don't think you're happy at all. And I don't think Charlie's your real name either.' These were crazy thoughts to be having. Undoubtedly crazy. But they did not feel crazy. They felt sane. They felt true. Big ideas here, because this is a child that has been losing his mind since we picked up with him in this book. And we only got to some truth in his understanding of the truth when we read through that essay and analyzed it. And there's a whole bonus episode just on that, because there was so much in there. He is telling us the truth. He does know what the truth is, things that he couldn't possibly know that he does know in this altered state of consciousness in which he wrote the poem. And now again, or now when he is telling us about this feels sane, this feels true, we're going to trust that because he knows what's up. So this is true. He knows something is wrong with Charlie the Choo Choo. Next to Charlie the Choo Choo is a book called Riddle de Dum, Brain Twisters and Puzzlers for Everyone. Everyone. We immediately pick up on this sing-songy, nursery rhymey thing going on with Riddle de Dum. It reminds us of the Lobstrosities, the favorite monster of the Dark Tower series thus far. Or maybe you like the Slow Mutants. Tell me what you think. Dumachum, Datachuck, Riddle de Dum. And we have been picking up on that theme since The Gunslinger and noticing how it's threading through everything we've been reading. And here it is again. We also remember that Miss Avery was talking about riddles just now and telling us how important they are in a good novel. So here we have our book of riddles. Jake opens the book. The first riddle: when is a door not a door? And we recognize this immediately from his final essay. This is what we would call a synchronicity. And those choo-choos and Charlie the choo-choo, also another synchronicity. And Jake will continue to have synchronicities. He's already had a couple. Felt like a good time to talk about the metaphysical concept of synchronicities. Are you ready to dive in? I did a deep dive, not as deep as I could have, I'm sure. We could do seminars on synchronicities, but here's some information for you as it pertains to life, the universe, and everything, and the Dark Tower, which is life, the universe, and everything. Synchronicity is a concept introduced by Carl Jung. I love Carl Jung, and if you are a Tower junkie and you've read the series and you've been watching me and my Dark Tower friend Ash analyze the Man in Black, we did a whole episode about Jung and Jungian archetypes and how the Man in Black falls into the shadow archetype of Roland. So familiar with the ideas of Mr. Carl here at Dark Tower YouTube. So anyway, this is his idea, and he's using this word synchronicity to describe events that happen around the same time and seem to be meaningfully connected, related, even though that connection is not obvious to our physical senses. So that's a synchronicity. Jung says this is a healthy function of the mind. He's also talking about this idea when he's trying to give evidence for the idea of the paranormal. So he was into that shit, which was cool. And he was reading his patients' birth charts and talking about synchronicities and considering the idea of past lives and ghosts and all kinds of crazy stuff. He did note that synchronicities were not always a positive thing, but they could end up being schizophrenic delusions, believing that everything is connected. And we think of that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the board and all of the strings connected together. And I believe it's Charlie, another Charlie. I could be wrong there. Really kind of losing it, trying to see all of these connections. So could be healthy, could be unhealthy. Weirdly, Carl Jung came up with this name, synchronicity, based on his experience of the I Ching. He needed language to talk about the I Ching, and that's where this came from. I love diving into this stuff. I never could have imagined we were going to be talking about the I Ching. This is another cool metaphysical, magical text, ancient Chinese. This is a divination text. And it was written somewhere about 1,000 years before the birth of our Lord and Savior, usually translated as the Book of Changes. The divination here, I have studied some divination. I've dabbled. This is insane. Anybody out there using the I Ching, you could give me some lessons, because I'm blown away at the seemingly complex nature of it. So the I Ching divination, we have bundles of yarrow sticks. So we have a bunch of sticks, and we're going to manipulate them to produce, bear with me, sets of 6, apparently random numbers ranging from 6 to 9. I'm already lost. If we have to do math or count, I'm out when it comes to divination. Each of the 64 possible sets corresponds to a hexagram, which then can be looked up in the I Ching. So basically we were like dropping sticks, seeing they have some sort of number order, and they form some sort of pattern that corresponds to a hexagram, which is, no, not the hexagram that you're thinking of. Interestingly, I am on a rewatch of the show Lost, which I think I've mentioned on here before. And spoilers for Lost, so if you, well, that show's 20 years old now, guys, but so is this series. The Dharma Initiative symbol is the I Ching hexagram thingamajig. So that was a synchronicity for me. Isn't that cool? All right, where are we? Okay, so we figure out what is this hexagram. We look it up in this book of divination, and then it tells us the seemingly random arrangement of these sticks means that you're going to get married tomorrow, or you're going to lose all your money, or all the things that divination is telling us. It's usually money and relationships. Health, that's the other one. You're going to cure your broken toe. That's all in the I Ching. And Jung was into this, and this is what he said about it. This is the origins of synchronicity, in case I've already lost the plot a little bit. This is Jung. Carl Jung says, the science of the I Ching is based not on the causality principle, but on one which, hitherto unnamed, because not familiar to us, I have tentatively called the synchronistic principle. I love it. That's really cool. So that's where that word comes from. He also was looking to modern physicists to try and understand the nature of synchronicity, to make it not completely unknown random, but how is it tying into what we do know about the nature of life, the universe, and everything. And he attempted to adapt many ideas into this field to accommodate his conception of synchronicity, including the property of numinosity. Have you heard of this word, numinous? Because this fits in, and it 100% fits into our travels through Stephen King's magnum opus. Numinous means arousing spiritual or religious emotion. It is mysterious or awe-inspiring. It can also mean supernatural or appealing to the aesthetic sensibility. Numinous. And we're going to see Jake having this numinous experience later, if I get there in this episode. This term was given its present sense by a German theologian and philosopher. His name was Rudolf Otto, and he wrote a book in 1917 called The Idea of the Holy, which is another book to put on my wish list. I have so many books. I just see a book like that, I think I must have that. I must read it, and I buy it, and it sits on my bookshelf, and I have to deal with the broken refrigerator and fixing the roof and putting the dog out, and I rarely get there, but I want that one too, to sit on my shelf. This man, he's cool. He's up to some cool shit in his time, because he also uses the phrase mysterium tremendum as a synonym for numinous. And I love this because these are going to describe what is going on with Jake, what happened to Eddie, and gives us some vocabulary, new vocabulary. Jung, again, he's trying to tie in the physical and extra-physical. He's working with Nobel Prize-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli, and also on the topic of synchronicity, Carl Jung connected with Albert Einstein. So cool. This is cool, right? All right, so they're trying to work on what is the relationship between mind and matter using quantum entanglement as their model. You don't think I'm going to explain quantum entanglement to you, do you? But this is an idea where when there's related atoms, nuclear subatomic particles, they can separate, but they never really separate in some way, because when I manipulate this one, that one over there that is no longer connected physically to this one is showing the same result. That's my really bad, dummy explanation of quantum entanglement. Please correct me and school us all in the comments. Quantum entanglement. But that's how serious Carl Jung is about this idea, trying to figure out how are these things appearing seemingly randomly. Why is Jake having channeling, when is a door not a door, into this essay, and later in a few hours he picks up a book and it says that? How did that happen? Did he do that? Did the universe do that? What is the relationship there? Or is it just, are these things just a coincidence? Heck no. To give you an example from Carl Jung's perspective, I'm going to read from his 1960 book, synchronicity. Are you ready? So this is Carl Jung writing, and we're going to hear about a patient he had and what happened to her, which is freaking cool. By way of example, I shall mention an incident from my own observation. A young woman I was treating had, at a critical moment, a dream in which she was given a golden scarab. While she was telling me this dream, I sat with my back to the closed window. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, like a gentle tapping. Had he read The Raven? I turned around and saw a flying insect knocking against the window pane from the outside. I opened the window and caught the creature in the air as it flew in. It was the nearest analogy to a golden scarab that one finds in our latitudes, a scarabade beetle, the common rose chafer, which, contrary to its usual habits, had evidently felt an urge to get into a dark room at this particular moment. It was an extraordinarily difficult case to treat, and up to the time of the dream, little or no progress had been made. I should explain that the main reason for this was my patient's animus, which was steeped in Cartesian philosophy and clung so rigidly to its own idea of reality that the efforts of 3 doctors, I was the third, had not been able to weaken it. Evidently, something quite irrational was needed, which was beyond my powers to produce. The dream alone was enough to disturb ever so slightly the rationalistic attitude of my patient. But when the scarab came flying in through the window in actual fact, her natural being could burst through the armor of her animus possession, and the process of transformation could at last begin to move. Ooh, can you imagine being that person sitting in that room talking about your dream of the scarab beetle, and then a scarab beetle flies in through the window? It taps on the window. Hey, let me in. That's not a coincidence. So what happened there? We don't have language for that, but now we do. It's called a synchronicity. You can make it what you want of it, but the idea that it's moving, it's shifting, it's an seemingly extra physical phenomenon that moves or shifts the people involved, the person involved. So we can imagine that all of these synchronicities are shifting Jake, transforming Jake, transmuting Jake into a new version of himself, moving him closer to who he wants to be. We hope. We can only hope. After describing some more examples, I'm not going to read them all, they're cool though, Jung wrote, "When coincidences pile up in this way, one cannot help being impressed by them. For the greater the number of terms in such a series, or the more unusual its character, the more improbable it becomes." We can agree to that, and we can say with Jake, these are piling up and up and up and becoming unusual and very improbable that something else is not going on here, that these are just coincidences, and we are impressed. Okay, so we're going to get back to the story, back to the synchronicities, back to the mysterium tremendum. Jake tucks Charlie the Choo-Choo under his arm and picks up the riddle book. He opens it at random and sees this. King writes, "When is a door not a door?" "When it's ajar," Jake muttered. He could feel sweat popping out on his forehead, his arms, all over his body. "When it's ajar." "Find something, son?" a mild voice inquired. So just pausing to say, have you ever had a synchronicity happen to you? And everybody has. Y'all have picked up the phone to call somebody and they were ringing you at that very moment. You thought, I'm singing a song that's on the radio, and you turn on the radio, and there it is. Those are synchronicities. Some of them, those are small, every day. People have those kinds of things. Do you have any big ones you want to share? And do you, like Jake, have this feeling, this embodiment of the magic going on? We have goosebumps, we're sweating, our body is recognizing something out of the ordinary is happening. All right. By the way, I'm Tower, Calvin Tower. He stuck out his hand. Jake's eyes widened, and he took an involuntary step backward. What? The fat guy looked at him with some interest. Calvin Tower. Which word is profanity in your language, oh Hyperborean wanderer? So the name Tower startles Jake, but he doesn't really know why. We're more shocked by the name than Jake is because we're reading The Dark Tower and we remember everything that happened to Jake. We know as much about the tower as Roland does, or as much as he's told us at this point, but Jake has only had minimal exposure to the tower. When he lived in Roland's world, he got very little explanation about what is the tower, why are we going there, so he doesn't know much about it. Just one or two very brief conversations. So this is not in his conscious periphery, but he did paste the Leaning Tower of Pisa onto his final essay. So he has some, and he scribbled the black on it, so he has some big subconscious feelings about it. And that subconscious part of him, the part that is tapped into other worlds than these, is fully engaged right now in what's going on. Calvin Tower turns out to be super chatty Cathy and knows his books. He continues on with Jake's synchronicity run, suggesting that Jake's name sounds like, this is King writing, a footloose hero in a Western novel. The guy who blows into Black Fork, Arizona, cleans up the town, and then travels on. Something by Wayne D. Overholser, maybe. A little later. Now I would have pegged you as a Robert Howard kind of kid from the jump, looking for a good deal on one of those nice old Donald M. Grant editions. The ones with the Roy Krenkel paintings, dripping swords, mighty thews, and Conan the Barbarian hacking his way through the Stygian hordes. That sounds pretty good, actually. These are for my little brother. It's his birthday next week. Calvin Tower used his thumb to flip his glasses down onto his nose and had a closer look at Jake. Really? You look like an only child to me. An only child if I ever saw one. Enjoying a day of French leave as Mistress May trembles in her green gown just outside the bosky dell of June. Come again? Never mind. Spring always puts me in a William Cooperish mood. People are weird, but interesting. Tex, am I right? I guess so, Jake said cautiously. He couldn't decide if he liked this odd man or not. All of those books and references and Donald M. Grants are in that bonus episode because Stephen King just didn't pick authors and books and publishers at random to put into the mouth of Calvin Tower. Oh no, these are very purposeful choices and we have a lot to say about them. So go check that out. Interesting too that Jake doesn't know if he likes him or not. So we're gonna check that, mark that. He doesn't have this is a cool man in a cool bookstore. He's a little hesitant. He's getting this feeling of wariness, so which seems a little unusual. I mean, Calvin Tower's kind of a weirdo and just talking weird stuff, but Jake is a psychic kid, remember? And so his feeling of, I'm not sure if I trust this person or not, we are paying attention to in that shinning sort of way. Turns out there's another person in the bookstore who had been playing chess with Tower before Jake came in. He is reading a copy of The Plague. Again, in that other episode. His name is Aaron Deepneau, and he seems like a pretty nice man. He might be the nicer, kinder, gentler man in the bookstore today. And as luck would have it, or as synchronicity would have it, or as Ka would have it, Jake has exactly the right amount of money to pay for the books that he wants. He buys the books, leaves the store, opens up Riddle-de-Dum, and reads the introduction. King writes, "Riddles are perhaps the oldest of all the games people still play today. It began. The gods and goddesses of Greek myth teased each other with riddles, and they were employed as teaching tools in ancient Rome. The Bible contains several good riddles. One of the most famous of these was told by Samson on the day he was married to Delilah. Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. He asked this riddle of several young men who attended his wedding, confident that they wouldn't be able to guess the answer. The young men, however, got Delilah aside, and she whispered the answer to them. Samson was furious and had the young men put to death for cheating. In the old days, you see, riddles were taken much more seriously than they are today. By the way, the answer to Samson's riddle, and all other riddles in this book, can be found in the section at the back. We only ask that you give each puzzler a fair chance before you peek." Jake turned to the back of the book, somehow knowing what he would find even before he got there. Beyond the page marked Answers, there was nothing but a few torn fragments and the back cover. The section had been ripped out. Of course it had. Jake goes back into the bookstore, and Calvin Tower calls him Hyperborean Wanderer a third time, and I go into more detail as to why is King telling us Hyperborean Wanderer again and again and again in this section. But you might not want to go listen to a bonus episode. This is enough for you, right? Hyperborea was what the ancient Greeks called the furthest, most northern parts of the known world. And the Hyperboreans were the mythical people who lived there, maybe mythical. Despite their location in what we, the ancient Greeks, thought was this far off northern frigid part of the world, the Hyperboreans were believed to inhabit a sunny, temperate, and divinely blessed land. So we're maybe not as north as all that. The oldest myths portray them as the favorites of Apollo. And some ancient Greek writers regarded the Hyperboreans as the mythical founders of Apollo's shrines at Delphi. You know that one. Later writers disagreed on the existence and location of the Hyperboreans. Some said, no, these are all made up. These guys never existed. And some smart people are connecting them to real world people and places, including Britain, Scandinavia, and Siberia. In medieval Renaissance literature, Siberia is the Russia, okay. In medieval and Renaissance literature, the Hyperboreans came to signify remoteness and exoticism. So, Hyperborean Wanderer, referring to Jake. He is wandering out of his comfort zone. He is wandering out of the known territory. So he has his routine, he goes to school, he has broken free of that. I don't think he's headed north, though, in this journey. But anyway, out of the normal things that are going on and having a great adventure where crazy things are happening to him. So this is a good fit for this scholarly person to refer to Jake, who he gets a kick out of himself. And he's going to refer to Jake as Hyperborean Wanderer, but does Tower have any inkling that Jake has actually been to other worlds? Because we're just talking about what's happening right here in the Wastelands, but we know that Jake is a traveler to other worlds than these. He's taken the ultimate trip of death and found himself in the Wastelands, or in the way station. He's in the Wastelands novel now, but he found himself in the way station. And then he died again. And he was like, that's all right. There's other worlds, plural, than these. He is a great wanderer, a great adventurer. Does Calvin Tower have any inkling of that on some metaphysical level? I don't know. We're just throwing that out there for consideration. Jake went back in there because he doesn't know the answer to the riddle. And he doesn't want to think about it. He's like me. He goes in and he says, tell me the answer to the riddle. Aaron Deepneau sings a song to answer the riddle. A song about Samson to answer this riddle. Turns out this is a double riddle. There are two answers here. One answer is a lion. Out of the strong is the lion. Came forth sweetness, honey. The other answer is honey. So honey and a lion are the answers to this riddle. It's not a great riddle. I went and looked it up. I wasn't overly familiar with this story, so we have a pretty good summary in the Riddle-de-Dum book, but let's dive deeper. Why not? We're here. We're in the Bible, and I mean, this series so far, we've talked about the Bible a lot, have we not, at Dark Tower YouTube? Because Stephen King is telling us about the Bible a lot. So here it is again. And we're in the book of Judges in the Old Testament. Samson is a judge. He's a king, kind of before there were actual kings. Not quite as powerful, but same idea. He goes to the Philistine city of Timnah, and he sees a woman there, and he fancies her and decides to marry her. This is not Delilah. So there's some differences here. This is not Delilah. This is an unnamed. He had a lot of chicks. Delilah was one of them, the most famous one, but this was not her. I don't think so, because he gets rid of her at the end of the day. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So he sees this woman, she's beautiful, he wants to marry her, so he's going back and forth between wherever he's living and Timnah. And he's attacked by a lion on one of these. But God likes him or whatever because the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson and he tears the lion apart limb from limb with his bare hands. He's a big, strong man. No big deal. Later, he's on another trip to go see this woman. He passes the dead lion and he finds that a swarm of bees have made a nest, a beehive, in the lion's carcass. The only one who knows about this is Samson, and that's important because it's not a fair riddle, I don't think. It's a bad riddle. And this harkens to, we've mentioned the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit when we were talking about riddles, however many episodes ago. And the riddle that stumps Gollum is it's a cheater. It's a cheater riddle. What's in my pocket? That's not a riddle. Only Bilbo knows the answer to that. But Gollum thinks it's a riddle, and he's going to play it as a riddle, and Bilbo thinks, I got this sucker, and so it is. So Samson is the only one who knows what has happened with this lion, and that's the riddle that he's going to pose to these wedding guests. So it's not fair, because it's not a real riddle. He just made it up based on something that only he saw. So he's a big, fat cheater. Okay, but this is at his wedding ceremony, and he says, if y'all answer this, 30 men, I don't think they included women back in the day unless we wanted to marry them. If you win, I'm gonna get you 30 outfits. I'm gonna get 30 outfits for you. He poses the riddle. He bets that they're not gonna be able to solve this because it's not fair. And he's right to think that. they can't figure it out because, again, it's not fair. And they start getting his new wife, tell us the answer. We want our outfits. And if you don't, we're going to burn you and your father to death. So she's highly motivated to get the answer. She doesn't know it because it's not real. And she gets it out of, she nags and nags and nags as women do. And finally he tells her. And when he goes back, it's a 7-day feast. When you had a wedding back then, it was a big deal. On the 7th day, they give Samson the answer. The answer is, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And so those are the answers, just like Aaron Deepneau said. 2 answers, a lion and honey. So Samson lost. They got it right. And now he owes them 30 outfits. So he goes to some other Philistine city and kills 30 men and takes their outfits. And that's what he uses to pay his debts. The Bible is wild. I don't know what they were doing, but this is all kind of ethically questionable. And this riddle, which is, the Riddle de Jung book is saying there's several good riddles in the Bible. There's not, according to what I'm looking at. This is maybe the only one. And it is described as unfair, as we've talked about. And because it's so unfair, scholars of the Bible and of riddles are trying to figure out that maybe there's some other less factual solution to this riddle. These are great. So one possible solution is that everybody in ancient Palestine knew that bees were at their most productive when the sun was in the sign of Leo. Everybody knows that. So the bees are the honey and Leo is the lion. Okay. Another scholar suggested that this riddle was a play on words. And he says that the original text uses an Arabic word for honey. So an Arabic word for honey, the original text of the Bible, which in Hebrew is the same word for lion. So he's saying this Arabic word for honey equals the Hebrewic, that's not a word for lion. So he's saying the word honey is derived from the word lion. And that actually sounds pretty darn clever. And we say, that makes sense. I think that could be the real answer here. Only problem is nobody else has been able to confirm the existence of that Arabic word in question. So, You want a disturbing answer to the riddle? Oh, yeah. The possible solution to the riddle includes vomit and semen, match made in heaven, which would both connect with the circumstances of the wedding feast. Good times. And in support of the semen interpretation, the writer cites several other passages in biblical writing in which eating and drinking are used as metaphors for sexual intercourse. Again, out of the eater came something to eat. Vomit. Out of the strong came something sweet. Semen. You didn't think we were going there today, did you? I should have put a not safe for work label on this episode. All right, where are we? So, okay, and this is interesting too. So the solution offered by the wedding guest, so when he says, what's the answer? They say, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? Those are questions. It's not an answer. So that's an appearance of a riddle. This man, I'm going to use his name because I think he might be getting to the gist of this. Herman Stahn suggested that this might have been a traditional wedding riddle, and the answer is love. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Love. So do you see what we did there? A riddle within a riddle? Maybe? I like that one though, because we're giving this weird riddle from Samson that is unfair and doesn't make any sense, and how could anybody know it? And the answer is also a question, is also a riddle. And we're at a wedding feast. And the answer is love. And this is perhaps even a traditional thing that people said at weddings, which I can imagine. It's cool. Okay, that's that. We're in the big picture of everything. We're going to zoom out and we're going to keep this wackadoo riddle in mind because King chose this one for a reason. Everything is intentional. It wasn't just a random riddle. He chose this one. It's biblical. It's that Bible tie-in that we've been seeing and keeping track of. This riddle is unfair. It has two answers, not just one, and maybe even three, if we're going with that Herman Stahn take. There could be more than meets the eye to this riddle in its official answer and in its multiple potential answers. So keeping all of those things in our Dark Tower database. All right, we're back in the bookstore and Aaron asks Jake a riddle. What can run but never walks? Has a mouth but never talks? Has a bed but never sleeps? Has a head but never weeps? Jake can't figure it out and he wants the answer immediately, as also I would. But Aaron says, no, you've got to puzzle it around in your mind. And if you can't figure it out, it gives you an excuse to come back here and talk to me. King writes, okay, Jake said, thanks, I will. But as he left, a certainty stole over him. He would never enter the Manhattan restaurant of the mind again. And there is Stephen King with those fun King things telling us the future. And the certainty, again, with Jake, who does have an understanding of truth and sanity and certainty. So we believe him here. This is the last time he's ever stepping foot in that place. Right. Jake is walking down Second Avenue. He's pondering the riddle, but it starts to float out of his mind because this numinous feeling, this increasing sense of anticipation, his 5 senses are turned up to 11. He feels like something amazing is going to happen. But this time, it's not going to be bad, like when he knew he was about to die. This one's going to be good, and he knows this. He starts with his psychic hotline powers again, starts predicting what is going to happen to him. King writes, and now, as he drew close to the place where the course would be set, that knowing in advance fell upon him once again. A bum is going to ask me for a handout, and I'll give him the change Mr. Tower gave me. And there's a record store. The doors are open to let in the fresh air, and I'll hear a stone song playing when I pass. I'm going to see my own reflection in a bunch of mirrors. And of course, these things do come to pass. So that's pretty cool because we remember Eddie's dream, where these exact things were happening to Eddie. At the time, we noted that Eddie, looking in the mirror, was wearing Jake's school uniform. What we didn't know at that time was that Jake would be experiencing literally these very things. He does hear that song, Paint It Black, just as Eddie heard in his dream. He notices that this is the Tower of Power record store. So Eddie's dream was a prophecy. It was a vision. It was a prophecy. Once again, we're saying Eddie's psychic prowess is just leveling up and up and up the longer that he spends in Roland's world. Jake knows he's going to a delicatessen. We're familiar with Tom and Jerry's artistic deli from Eddie's dream, so we know this is true. This is the truth. Jake begins to run. He believes that the door that he needs is going to be there at the deli. But when he arrives, he doesn't see the deli. The building has been torn down. It's only a vacant lot. So Eddie is dreaming about Tom and Jerry's artistic deli at this spot, and he sees the deli and the sign in the window. Eddie is from 1987. Jake is in 1977. And we're going to see that Jake finds the sign. So Eddie's dream is predicting the future of Jake, but happening somewhere before Jake existed. Now we have Eddie, Jake, and Odetta, Susanna, Detta. And it was 87, 77, and 64. So I wonder if Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli maybe was around in Susanna's time, linking those three together. We're not told that in the text. I'm just wondering. I think it was. And again, this is not a thing. I'm not giving you a spoiler, or I think that's my understanding of truth. That if we went to the corner of 2nd and 52nd in 1964 with Odetta Holmes, we would land on Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli as Eddie dreamed it. So his dream anyway is just, it's a time vortex kind of situation, which we love. Jake is crushed and he feels this hope draining out of him. He feels like this is the end of the line for sure. He had been, remember those voices had stopped? So the arguing voices, I'm alive, I'm dead, they had stopped. And we talked about that in the last episode. And when he gets here, he's just crushed. But the voices don't come back. So that's a clue that we're on the right course still, even though this is what we're looking at. Things are not as they appear upon first glance. Whatever magic has taken hold of Jake is still present because those voices didn't come back. He begins to look around and he sees the vacant lot and King writes. There's a sign in the vacant lot. King writes. This is what the sign says. Mills Construction and Sombra Real Estate Associates are continuing to remake the face of Manhattan. Coming soon to this location, Turtle Bay Luxury Condominiums. Call 555-6712 for information. You will be so glad you did. Coming soon? Maybe. But Jake had his doubts. The letters on the sign were faded, and it was sagging a little. At least one graffiti artist, Bango Skank by name, had left his mark across the artist's drawing of the Turtle Bay Luxury Condominiums in bright blue spray paint. A little later, a little way further along, another graffito had been spray painted on the fence. This one in what had once undoubtedly been a bright red, but which had now faded to the dusky pink of late summer roses. Jake whispered the words aloud, his eyes wide and fascinated. See the turtle of enormous girth. On his shell he holds the earth. If you want to run and play, come along the beam today. Jake supposed the source of this strange little poem, if not its meaning, was clear enough. This part of Manhattan's East Side was known, after all, as Turtle Bay. But that didn't explain the goose flesh, which was now running up the center of his back in a rough stripe, or his clear sense that he had found another road sign along some fabulous hidden highway. Curiouser and curiouser. We have the beam mentioned here, and we know what that is, and the turtle, and we know who that is. We're putting them together here for Jake. We'll remember that we are on the beam that connects the bear to the portal of the turtle, portal of the bear, portal of the turtle, with the dark tower smack in the middle, or so we're believing if we're listening to what Roland has to say about it. In Roland's world, it's been all bear stuff, Bearzilla and all of that. We met him, we killed him, we found his portal, put our backs to it, and are now headed towards the Dark Tower, we think. But in Jake, in New York City with Jake, it's all turtle stuff. We flipped the bear stuff for the turtle stuff. Hold that thought, because I think there's more to this, but we'll come back to it once Jake has his full experience. Jake jumps the fence, gets into the lot, twists his ankle in the process, but he's okay. In the vacant lot, he feels something thrumming, vibrating. He knows what the deli that stood there looked like, revealing more of his own psychic abilities. Then he finds the Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli sign. King writes, the letters were faded, but he could still make them out. Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli. Party platters, our specialty. And below it, spray painted in that same red fading to pink, was this puzzling sentence. He holds us all within his mind. This is the place, Jake thought. Oh yes. A little later. Jake was very aware of his own breathing and of the sunlight falling upon everything like a weight of gold. He suddenly understood that he was standing on the edge of a great mystery, and he felt a shudder, half terror and half wonder, work through him. It's all here. Everything. Everything is still here. The weeds brushed at his pants. Burdocks stuck to his socks. The breeze blew a ring-ding wrapper in front of him. The sun reflected off it, and for a moment the wrapper was filled with a beautiful, terrible inner glow. Everything is still here, he repeated to himself, unaware that his face was filling with its own inner glow. Everything. He was hearing a sound, had been hearing it ever since he entered the lot, in fact. It was a wonderful high humming, inexpressibly lonely and inexpressibly lovely. It might have been the sound of a high wind on a deserted plain, except it was alive. It was, he thought, the sound of 1,000 voices singing some great open chord. He looked down and realized there were faces in the tangled weeds and low bushes and heaps of bricks. Faces. What are you? Jake whispered. Who are you? There was no answer, but he seemed to hear beneath the choir the sound of hoofbeats on the dusty earth, and gunfire, and angels calling hosannas from the shadows. The faces in the wreckage seemed to turn as he passed. They seemed to follow his progress, but no evil intent did they bear. He could see 46th Street and the edge of the UN building on the other side of First Avenue. But the buildings did not matter. New York did not matter. It had become as pale as window glass. The humming grew. Now it was not 1,000 voices, but 1,000,000, an open funnel of voices rising from the deepest well of the universe. He caught names in that group voice, but could not have said what they were. One might have been Martin. One might have been Cuthbert. Another might have been Roland. Roland of Gilead. There were names. There was a battle of conversation that might have been 10,000 intertwined stories. But above all was that gorgeous, swelling hum, a vibration that wanted to fill his head with bright, white light. It was, Jake realized, with a joy so overwhelming that it threatened to burst him to pieces. The voice of yes. The voice of white. The voice of always. It was a great chorus of affirmation, and it sang in the empty lot. It sang for him. Then, lying in a cluster of scrubby burdock plants, Jake saw the key, and beyond that, the rose. Holy shit, guys. I think we all need to take a moment after that. That is a religious experience. When I started this series and made the introduction, I told you so. I said that this text is the most spiritual thing you're ever going to read. Did you have feelings? Did you have that numinous feeling? Were you there with Jake, feeling these things? I almost cried. The voice of yes. The voice of white. The voice of always. Whew, okay. A lot of things to pull out. The ring-ding wrapper. That's a fun thing. We're going to lighten the mood a little bit. Do you remember back in the drawing of the three when we had our shootout, showdown, face-off between Eddie and I can't remember who. Maybe Andolini, before they're going to take him to Balazar's place. And a ring-ding wrapper blows across like a tumbleweed. Remember that fun little thing? Well, here we have the ring-ding wrapper blowing across Jake's path. We're linking Eddie and Jake a shit ton here in today's episode. But that little thing right there, that is why you listen to Dark Tower YouTube. Because who else picked up on that? The ring-ding wrapper tying Eddie and Jake together. All right, let's talk about New York City is pale as window glass. It does not matter anymore. That's insane. And this is making me think of the magical thing about the veil between worlds getting thin. Have you heard this? Sacred spaces. People saying the veil is thin. They might say it during an eclipse, but there's definitely physical locations or experiences where we're also going to feel that shift. And Jake is feeling it right now. You feel different than you've ever felt in your whole life when you're in a space like this, where it's the outer world becomes as pale as window glass. It doesn't matter anymore. You are changed. You are quiet. You are at ease. These are transformational spaces. And we talked about liminal spaces back in the Gunslinger, but those were a little bit creepy. We had a little bit of an uneasy feeling in those spaces, but these spaces feel a little more calm and less spooky. Some would say that places here on Earth where there's a natural element at play in terms of one of the elements meeting another element, we might have this experience. So where the ocean meets the land, where the mountain meets the sky, where the fire meets the air, we could have some of these inner feelings of transformation, of calm, of peace. I think doorways are another way that we could feel. If you've ever seen a doorway or felt something when you're going to step through a doorway into a new environment, and we think back to those doorways on the beach in the drawing of the three, and how those, I'm sure, had that same kind of thin feeling around them, where the outside world just becomes irrelevant. And remember that was where the ocean met the land and where the mountain met the sky. That's where those doorways showed up. These can be experiences, so it doesn't have to be a physical place. It happens in a physical place, but have you ever been witness to a baby being born? And the rest of the world, the hospital, what's going on outside of this portal of life is not important anymore. The veil is thin. Or when someone leaves this life, have you sat with someone when they died? We're otherly focused. The outer world, the real world, is unimportant, pale as window glass. So lots of stories about people sitting with someone on their deathbed, and the person on their deathbed is able to see things that we don't see, to see relatives, other people. Sometimes they don't know these other people, and have conversations with them, and they're lucid. They're not, people argue about that, but anyway, I love to think about these places. These can be times of day, dusk, dawn, twilight. There's magic in the air. Some of the physical locations: Iona Abbey in Scotland, the Redwood Forests in Washington, Glastonbury, and it would seem Jake's vacant lot at the corner of 2nd Avenue and 46th Street. I think I misspoke earlier and said 52nd. All right, what else are we pulling out of this? Jeez Louise. Okay, these, a battle of conversations that might have been 10,000 intertwined stories. And we get the name Martin. And I think, why are we hearing about Martin? Why is that a name that's being talked about? The intertwined stories. Well, we have had a lot of books thrown at us by Stephen King in this particular novel. We had Miss Avery's talking about books. Susanna's talking about books. Eddie's thinking about books. Calvin Towers telling us 10 million books. So I feel like there's something here to just pay attention to. 10,000 intertwined stories. And Martin is not a name that you would expect to be associated when we have this beautiful humming sound and we're hearing about Cuthbert and Roland of Gilead. Why Martin? Except he's part of their story. He's part of that bigger story. On the topic of the hosannas in the highest, you guys want to know about the word hosanna? I know you do. That's why I looked it up for you. It's not what you think it is. We always think about hosanna, the angels are singing hosannas, praise be, glory be. That's not what it means. It's a Hebrew phrase that combines the words Hoshia na. Hoshia means, and I'm saying it wrong. That's the given at this point, guys. I'm trying. Hoshia means save, and na means please. Save us, please. Save us now. It's a desperate plea for salvation. And when Jesus is going into Jerusalem to be crucified, so we're around the time of Easter. That just happened, I think, last week. I'm not good with time these days, but I think it was Easter last week, and then it was Palm Sunday. And that's where this shows up with Jesus in the Bible, and the people are saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, Hosanna in the highest. It means save us. And I heard this really cool, I went even deeper. And this man is talking about how if you were kidnapped, so back in the day, if you lived around this time, you could just be taken and sold into slavery. I mean, I guess this still happens, unfortunately, but much more commonplace back then. You're just nabbed, you're a slave, you're my slave now. And so I'm held captive in this foreign city, but my king is coming through the city today, and I know it. And so this is my cry to my king. Save me now. I belong to you. I belong to you. Save me now. Hosanna. Hoshiana. Hoshiana. Isn't that cool? All right. Also, this is found in a book of Psalms, and it reads, Ana Yahweh Hoshiana, save us, we pray, O Lord. So there's just another example of this is not what you probably thought it meant. So combination of these Hebrew words expressing an urgent petition for God to bring deliverance, salvation, prosperity. Next, okay, we're doing good. I think we're gonna get through. The white. I knew that this episode was going to be this long. And so I said, you know what, Michelle, we're going to have to do a separate thing because I went down a rabbit hole of the white, the black, the red. and the symbolism that we have coming up in Christianity, in ancient Egypt, in Buddhism, just to pick and choose a couple of the big ones and see what are we talking about here. Because the idea that Jake is filling with white light, Jake is thinking it's the white. This is big. So King uses that twice there. Remember back in the Gunslinger, Jake was compared to an alabaster saint several times. He was white, light, innocence. Roland took him under the mountains into the darkness. And that's what it was. So what I'm going to do, there's a whole bonus episode. We're just going to talk about what do those colors signify in some major spiritual religious traditions, because it's cool and it absolutely bears on what we're talking about here, because we've got the dark, it's called the Dark Tower. We're going to the Dark Tower. And I've questioned that a few times. The Dark Tower? Why aren't we going to the White Tower, Roland? Why are we going to the Dark Tower? I don't want to go there. I want to go to the White Tower. The contrast of light and dark was huge in the Gunslinger. And recently we've had this idea of red coming into the story. And the red roses and the blood. We thought it was blood, but it was roses. And the red spray paint on the wall and this kind of thing. So we're paying attention to the theme of the colors very quickly. In brief, white in spirituality, in religion, in extra-physical realms is usually associated with good, healing, protection. We're bringing about some kind of positive transformation. We're in harmony with nature and the world. We're one with the divine. That's white. Traditionally, black, and we're talking about white magic, that's what we're using white magic for. Black magic is this selfish intention. I want what I want at any cost, and I'm going to lie, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to manipulate to get what I want. The proverbial deal with the devil at the crossroads. And I hate to say it, but Roland lying, manipulating back in the Gunslinger to get to the Dark Tower. It's all kind of obvious when we look at it like that. In ancient Egypt, black representing death and the afterlife, also fertility and resurrection, because they had this black soil. So Egypt, the word for Egypt is Kemet, which means the black land, which is about the fertile Nile River Valley. So we're growing good crops there. But it came to be twisted in our culture into this bad, dark thing. But for the ancient Egyptians, not necessarily. We have growth, we have birth, growth, death, regeneration, as is life, as are the crops. So that's cool to think about. And then we have that red rose. Red in the Bible, we have sin, blood, sacrifice. Also, though, some intertwining of ideas, not all bad here. So this red strand from, oh gosh, I can't remember the person's name now. Anyway, we're in the book of Joshua, and we have a red string, and there's a whole thing with that too. I'm trying to stay on track here, but this red strand has this theological meaning of sin and salvation being interwoven. So this idea of combination of good and bad, salvation and sin. And also in Buddhism, we have red is representing life force, compassion, fire, warmth, sacred transformation. And then, this is interesting. In Egypt, white and black are not opposites. Red and white are considered opposite colors because we had that white, in ancient Egypt, it is this purity, divinity, yada, yada. And red is like rage and chaos. So those are the opposites to the ancient Egyptians. They even made that their crowns were red and white, symbolizing this union of those ideas. So kind of salvation, a completeness when we pair these things and transmute them somehow. That's the fast version. You want the full version? It's coming. It's coming. All right, so Jake, understandably, he falls to his knees. He's weeping as we're weeping reading this. He finds that key. It's in the key, of course, the shape that Eddie is carving his key. He feels a jolt of power when he picks it up. King writes, he opened Charlie the Choo-Choo and put the key inside. Then his eyes fixed upon the rose again, and he realized it was the real key, the key to everything. He crawled toward it, his face a flaming corona of light, his eyes blazing wells of blue fire. The rose was growing from a clump of alien purple grass. As Jake neared this clump of alien grass, the rose began to open before his eyes. It disclosed a dark scarlet furnace, petal upon secret petal, each burning with its own secret fury. He had never seen anything so intensely and utterly alive in his whole life. And now, as he stretched one grimy hand out toward this wonder, the voices began to sing his own name. And deadly fear began to steal in toward the center of his heart. It was as cold as ice and as heavy as stone. There was something wrong. He could feel a pulsing discord, like a deep and ugly scratch across some priceless work of art, or a deadly fever smoldering beneath the chilly skin of an invalid's brow. It was something like a worm, an invading worm, and a shape, one which lurks just beyond the next turn of the road. Then the heart of the rose opened for him, exposing a yellow dazzle of light, and all thought was swept away on a wave of wonder. Jake thought for a moment that what he was seeing was only pollen, which had been invested with the supernatural glow which lived at the heart of every object in this deserted clearing. He thought it even though he had never heard of pollen within a rose. He leaned closer and saw that the concentrated circle of blazing yellow was not pollen at all. It was a sun, a vast forge burning at the center of this rose growing in this purple grass. It's a lot. We're going to have to go lay down when we're done this episode. We're going to talk about how this is similar to what Eddie experienced. Jake is realizing that perhaps it's not a sun, the sun. It's all suns contained within this rose, all universes. He continues to feel the wrongness of it. Something like a worm. King uses that terminology again, exactly the same. Something like a worm. He uses that twice and gives us that worm idea 3 times. It's a 3-beat with the worm. So we're really like, ooh. You hear the word worm, you're already kind of wincing a little bit about how gross it's going to be. Jake thinks everything's okay right now, but there's definitely danger here. The rose is in danger. He can't stop himself from reaching out and touching it, and this makes him lose consciousness. We're not done yet. That's where we're going to end our action of the story. So I did get through chapter 17. We have to look at, before we end today, the riddle here, because Miss Avery told us to, and Eddie had this dream. And it was recounting almost beat by beat everything that Jake experienced. So we need to go back and just dive a little deeper and say what was the same and what was different about what they experienced. So we have Eddie having a dream about being in Jake's shoes and walking towards the Dark Tower at Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli. And we have Jake walking in Jake's shoes, moving towards the vacant lot, which was Tom and Jerry's, where the rose is, not the tower. Okay, what's the same about these? The location. So both Eddie and Jake are on 2nd Avenue. It is spring, that is the same. It is early morning, 9:30-ish. They're both carrying books. Eddie, remember, had Thomas Wolfe, You Can't Go Home Again, but when he opened it up, we had the Man in Black and the Gunslinger instead of what's actually in Thomas Wolfe's book. And Jake is carrying his books from the bookshop. Traffic is light, and they both have this knowing where they're going. They both know this, it's a pull towards this space. We have very similar language that King uses. So here is Jake's experience. King writes, Jake walked on, the street signs floating past in a kind of dream daze. And when he was telling us about Eddie's dream, he said, Eddie walked on, lazing his way downtown, the street signs floating past him. Very similar. We are supposed to be saying these two people are doing the same thing here. We have that reflections of you store looking into the mirror. Looking into the mirror, the reflection, the bear and the turtle. The Dark Tower is kind of the mirror in between. And remember, one of those books was Alice in Wonderland. And I did not say this in the episode, the bonus episode, because I didn't think of it. I just thought of it a few minutes ago. Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass. If we could go through the looking glass, we would move from the turtle to the bear and the bear to the turtle. So we have that reflection theme happening. They're both wearing Jake's school uniform when they look into that mirror. So Eddie is this reflection of Jake, and Jake is a reflection of Eddie in some ways. He doesn't know it yet, though. The song is playing, the same Rolling Stones song. At the same point in the song they're hearing, the bum is sitting at the corner of 2nd and 52nd. That's where the bum is. See, that's where I'm going to end up. I thought the Dark Tower was here, and it's a bum looking for money. Bummer. They both have a key, the same key, we're led to believe. They both have this initial feeling of yes, yes, good, righteousness, triumph, that's shattered into something is wrong, something is sick here. There's a sickness, a blackness underneath. And we have the idea of thousands of worlds. Jake is experiencing that through the rose, and Eddie is having, I think the voice of Jack Andolini is saying to him, the train is rolling through thousands of different worlds. So that idea is present in both of these. There are some differences, though. It's not exactly the same experience. We have the different books that they're carrying that I already pointed out. There is no bookstore for Eddie. He didn't go to a bookstore. He has the magic shop. That's where the bum is sitting, and he experiences that bum as Balasar, sitting outside of the House of Cards magic shop, which featured a tower of tarot cards in the window. So we haven't lost that theme altogether, but that we're remembering how that was a big deal back in the end of the Gunslinger and throughout the drawing of the three. So part of who Eddie is on this journey being reflected back to him. And Jake doesn't have that. Jake had the bookstore. The Choo Choo Mamas, Jake experiences that store. So that's kind of that synchronicity of the choo choo for him. That's not mentioned in Eddie's dream. Eddie is getting messages about the train. And Jake has already been talking about the train and has the Charlie the Choo Choo. So it's showing up in different ways, perhaps. So it's a similarity, just showing up a little bit differently, again, with that mirror where Eddie's hearing about the train and predictions, perhaps, about the train, while Jake has picked up a book about a train. Tom and Jerry's is existing in Eddie's dream. We already talked about that a little bit. So Tom and Jerry's not there in 1977, but there at some point in time, I think it's Odetta Holmes's time, versus the vacant lot. So that's a difference. So they show up at the same place, but they're seeing something different happening there. But it's the same location. And then we have the tower versus the rose. And here's that mirror image again, where we see the dark tower is in a field of roses. And the rose, in Jake's experience, is in a sea of towers. So this mirror imaging going on. Pretty fucking cool. The door is there in Eddie's dream. He has the doorway, opens the doorway falls down, and he's at the dark tower in his dream. This is the door that Jake's looking for to get to Roland's world. Jake doesn't see that. He finds the rose. But I think because of all of the similarities we have been set up to see and the mirroring that's going on, where it's the same but a little different, it's showing up in a little bit of a different way, we have to assume that rose is a doorway of some kind. And in fact, it opens. It opens. And Jake's been getting those synchronicities about when is a door not a door, when it's ajar. And this rose opening like a door to show him everything that there is. I think he goes a little deeper than what Eddie got. Eddie sees the Dark Tower and he sees there's something wrong with it. And he's hearing about 10,000 worlds. Whereas Jake is having that experience when he is gazing into the rose. He sees what it is. And we know that the Dark Tower, at least according to Roland, is this nexus point of space-time, where all of these points converge, where all of the beams converge. We know that now. So this very powerful place, which is holding multiple realities, the multiverse, if you will. And Jake experiencing that, not through the tower, but through the rose. I need to go lay down. That was a lot. Are you guys with me? Are you loving it? I love the wasteland so much. It's the best. It's just the best. It is a religious experience. Feels like we went to church, doesn't it? Do you feel changed, transformed, like there's some hope in your life? We'll be back. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm around. You know, I'm around this space telling you stuff about the Dark Tower, so I'll be here again. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with me. If you're still here, I love you. I love you so much. Drop a comment. Hit the like button. Subscribe. Tell your Dark Tower friends about this because we need some more chatter going on because I know y'all are out there. I know the Dark Tower nerds are out there. And when I started this show, they said it's too niche. There's nobody who wants to listen to that. And I said, yes, there is. It'll take a minute, but I'm going to find my people. So if you're one of my people, thank you so much. Until we meet again, my lovelies, may you have long days and pleasant nights.